Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. And that brings us to a film which already exists in the Criterion Collection at spy number 336. But this year, on this occasion, the Criterion Collection has re-released this film based upon a new 4K digital restoration and also employing the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format. And I'm speaking of the film, which is from the year 1993. And the name of the filmmaker is Richard Linklater. And the name of the film is Dazed and Confused. This is the work from the year 1993, and it is from the writer and director Richard Linklater, and director of photography is Lee Daniel, and it has a very iconic, classic cast. It's a really fantastic cast. For example, we have people like Jason London and Joey Lauren Adams and Parker Posey and Roy Cochran and Anthony Rapp and Ben Affleck and Wiley Wiggins and Matthew McConaughey and Mila Jovovich and others, so many, Marissa Ribisi and others, so many great members of this classic, iconic cast of this classic, iconic film. And of course, I'm referring to this film, which is Dazed and Confused. And here we have the Criterion release or re-release of this film. Again, it's spy number 336. I say re-release because, again, on the occasion of this year, 2023, Criterion is re-releasing this film purporting to be based on a new 4K digital transfer. And also we have the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format being employed by Criterion for purposes of this physical media release. It has already been released prior in, for example, this earlier Blu-ray release, which is what I have here. And indeed, prior to that, there was a great DVD release, which is what I have here. And you can tell there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the Criterion logo as it appears in the DVD release versus as it appears in the Blu-ray release, and now as it appears in the in this 4K UHD. So much to say about this great film, and much to say about this great release. This is one of the best releases from Criterion's history, I would say. It's packed with a lot of information. It is filled with a lot of goodies in terms of physical media goodies, and the packaging and all the paraphernalia and memorabilia associated with this classic Criterion release is really wonderful, and this 2023 re-release is a great reminder of this. So we will talk a little bit about this a little bit later in this video. And so if we were to try to focus on the plot or story structure, or story structures, I should say, of Dazed and Confused, I think we can, of course, draw our attention to the location and the time period. This is 1976, May 1976, in Lee High School, or the surrounding environment of Lee High School in Austin, Texas. And so we have the Texas school culture and life as embodied by this particular set of stories. And again, the last day of school, on the cusp of the summer vacation. And for many people, it either means the last day before entering into high school life, the incoming freshman class, or for others, maybe a continuing on of the high school life and community, and maybe for others, moving on and graduating from high school, or maybe not, as the case may be, depending on which characters we're speaking about. And there is a whole bunch. There are so many iconic characters that are populating these, as I say, these communities, this very again, school-based community with many cliques and many groups that either have interconnections or not. They might be connected in terms of the party atmosphere, the party scene. There's a plot involving the success or failure of setting up of a party, and the ability or non-ability, as the case may be, for parties to take place without the parents knowing. And if things fall through, then what are the plans, the backup plans for parties going on? And this forms this sets the stage, for daytime life and then the nighttime life and the party culture and party scene that's involved with various aspects of these many groups that we're talking about, again, connected within this school community. Sort of day in the life, as it were, which is, I think, a very apropos way of looking at this. And it is, too, a film about everything and nothing, I could say. It is a film that is very much about the minutiae, the day-to-day scenes of school life and community. For instance, the pressures of, say, trying to succeed or avoiding failure at a school game, a sports game, for instance, or maybe the little minutiae of what happens, the rituals of the winning team and the losing team, good game, and that sort of thing, or the minutiae of clubs and after-school activities in the school, and how that either forms or maybe embodies a sense of a type of a subgroup or clique culture in school as well. And so we have also the hazing rituals that are a part of the incoming freshman class, as well as how the current high school generations or the high school grades or years are dealing with this. And there's a type of almost sadomasochistic element to this, which is done very tongue-in-cheek, very playfully. It also reveals a type of almost, again, this idea of everything or nothing. It seems maybe looking on the grand scheme of things to be very much a film about nothing, but it is about everything at the same time, because when one remembers, or at least when I remember when I was a high school student or entering into high school for the first time, not to say that my high school experience was very much similar to that of Dazed and Confused. On the contrary, I think my high school experience was somewhat different in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I can definitely relate in the sense that for a lot of the characters, a lot of the students we meet in Dazed and Confused, it is about everything and nothing at the same time. It is about living in the moment, Livin, living in the moment at once, and also thinking about what is going to happen after this moment is done. So in that sense, it is about everything and nothing. And then also this idea of things or events that might seem trivial, but they mean so much at the same time. And that could mean either a pitch at a ball game, a school game, or maybe it might mean this type of initiation ceremony, the hazing, and either succeeding or failing at that. Or it might mean perhaps trying to get into the good graces of quote-unquote the cool crowd, whether that might mean meeting new people or getting into certain adventures or mini-adventures, or finding people that you might be attracted to and trying to approach them for the first time, seeing what kinds of, say, situations and involvements that might occur. And that leads to traveling around the car culture, the Emporium, the Moon Tower, and again, the party scene and atmosphere, as well as, again, the daytime school setting and what happens after school is out and people are ready to party and to enjoy, as I say, to live life, living, Livin. So this is therefore my very, I think, crude and a very maybe unsophisticated way of describing this film. And I think many other people have described it much better and much more astutely than I could ever hope to try. But this is my endeavor to try to express, again, this is a network film. This is a sort of a quilt or a community film, a tapestry of many different characters that are interacting with each other. Some have a sense of playful rivalry. Others, maybe there is a sense of more intense rivalry. There may be ways in which characters can traverse various cliques or groups, which is, again, in the context of high school culture, that's a really big deal, to be able to translate oneself depending on the people that you are associated with at a given point in time. And so this is, I think, a reflection of, again, everything and nothing at once, which is one of the great strengths of the films of Richard Linklater, I would say. There is a way in which the moments are captured, and the moments seem to be of the now, of the current, and then when they are gone, they are gone. But there is a sense of living in the now, and the various moments are given a sense of prescience and a sense of importance, as well as a sense of the currency of the immediate, and as well as the day-to-day minutia, which I think really important indeed. So, for example, the emporium scenes, the foosball scenes, and the idea of the little details of the hazing, and details about grades and leaving early or not leaving early before the bell's out or the bell rings, and this is the hazing ceremony, the car culture, how the cars that people are driving, they form part of their character expressions, the music that's overlaid in terms of the soundtrack, and we'll get into that in terms of the great booklet that's included with this Criterion release. Again, echoes what the Criterion collection has done with this in terms of previous releases, as I mentioned. It's a great, iconic release. And then also the cast. The cast is stellar, and I mentioned a little bit of the cast because they form these really iconic characters that each fills a type of, maybe, I don't want to say role or niche. I mean, I think that is diminishing the value, and I don't mean to do that. I want to embellish the value of each of their contributions, because I think they represent so much, while at the same time forming a sense of individual spirit that is wholly their own character's identity, if I'm expressing that correctly. So, for example, we have characters like Clint, or characters like O'Banion, Darla, Mitch Kramer, Sabrina, as I mentioned, Mike, Cynthia Dunn, and let's see, Don Dawson, and Wooderson, and others. I mean, these are characters that they're forging their own identities, and they each are coming from a type of a background and almost a philosophy even that is, again, part of their clique or place in the high school community or culture, whether it's directly within the school community or maybe on the periphery or outskirts, whatever the case may be. And their intersections between and among each other, I think, form the heart and soul of this film. And there's a lot to say, too, about kind of the drinking culture, the drug culture, the approaches to, say, dating and sex that are applied here, or that are expressed by many of the characters here. Also hazing and a type of almost aggressive, maybe violence as well, that's expressed and voiced by certain characters as well. A type of aggression, or even a almost a mean-spiritedness as well, as a type of attempt at connecting with each other. And I think all of that is embodied in this expression of this high school community, again, in Austin, Texas. And so what's interesting about the film and how it balances these approaches, I think, really skillfully, is that we are, I think, as viewers, especially maybe viewers who are watching this film for the first time, or maybe viewers who have watched this film since its release and have continued to revisit this film over the course of many years, because it's now an iconic classic in the context of Linklater's filmography, as well as American cinema, not independent cinema actually, but American cinema, and also this coming of age comedy drama in the hands of Richard Linklater. But the point I wanted to bring is that there are some moments when it might seem a bit off-putting, or maybe what some characters might say or do might seem a bit in questionable taste, for example. There are other moments where some characters might be seen as almost villainous, or almost antithetical to the whole free spirit of the proceedings. There might be other characters that do things that are quite inscrutable. But there is always room for considering these same characters in a positive light. There is always room for considering these characters in a very, I think, encouraging way, in a very lovable and fun way. I mean, these are still characters that are, again, living in the moment, and they are expressing feelings that are wholly themselves and their own. And I think that type of attention to detail, as well as a type of giving room for breadth and scope of characters to live and breathe in this environment, I think is one of the great strengths of this film in the hands of Richard Linklater. And indeed, it can be said to be one of the great strengths of Linklater's filmography prowess writ large. The fact that he is able to provide three-dimensionality to the characters, good and bad, nuanced, but always, always, always who they are in the moment. And I think that gives way for really iconic performances. I've mentioned, for instance, Parker Posey's Darla. It's very iconic. Or Ben Affleck's O'Banion. Very, very iconic. Wiley Wiggins' Mitch Kramer, or Matthew McConaughey's Wooderson, and others. I mean, this is an iconic gathering of iconic characters in this iconic film, classic film, which is Dazed and Confused. One of the great, I think, embodiments of the time and culture, both in terms of the story setting, 1976, so late 70s America, as well as the time in which this film was made, early 90s America, as well as how it has achieved a sense of longevity and cult status and iconic status as the years have progressed. So Dazed and Confused is back, or it is re-released in the Criterion collection. And I should say, too, on a personal note, I mentioned a little bit about my own high school experience. I went to high school in the United States. And while I wouldn't claim at all to say that this film, Dazed and Confused, well, yeah, I won't say that. Dazed and Confused is not in any way a direct, say, reference to, say, how I lived my own high school years. But at the same time, I can definitely relate and understand certain aspects of it, and I can relate and understand and maybe even go along with very, very intensely and very intimately with a lot of the stories, threads, and a lot of the feelings and attitudes and atmospheres that many of the characters espouse and express. And so, in that spirit, I come at this film, and I remember when it was first released, and ever since then, it's just grown and grown and grown. And now that I look back on this film again, my time in America, where I lived again growing up, and now I'm thinking again in this time of my life when I'm about to relocate back to America after many years, watching a film like Dazed and Confused again like this at this time is it brings back a lot of memories. And I don't want to say that this film, I think, is claiming in any way to be a wholly unified representation of American high school life for everyone. I don't think it's that case at all. But it is a very individualized experience that has moments that I think can be accessed by many people. And so in that way, I think it has a unifying experience when watching it. And it is able to jog memories within me, and I know within many others, either directly or indirectly, either in terms of a metaphor or perhaps a more direct representation of high school life and existence, and indeed growing up and coming to terms with details of life, or maybe not even coming to terms with, just living the moment. And I think that has a lot of nuance and echoes, not just in the context of adolescence and high school life, but I think just in the context of the human experience overall, which is, again, one of the great, almost cosmic points of Richard Linklater's cinema that I think is very magical, very special. And that magic and that specialness is embodied, and then some, in a film like Dazed and Confused. I mean, you get it in the spirit, the atmosphere, the music. I mean, I mentioned the great soundtrack as well. And then the performances and the carefree spirit, which I think when one considers the behind the scenes and production details, which we'll get a little bit into when we talk about the supplements of this, I think we realize just how complex this film really was. In terms of how it straddled the line between, quote unquote, the independent film spirit that Linklater was coming from versus the studio or big budget movie making machine, industrial machine, etc., which is also something that this film was very much involved in and the like. So there is so much complexity behind the scenes. There's so much complexity in front of the scenes, but as much complexity as there is, again, it is a film, I would say, and I mean this very, very positively. It is about everything and nothing all at once. It is about the mundane and the cosmic. It is about the infinite and also the moment, the now. And it is about everything in between. And in that way, it is such a fun ride indeed. This is the work which is Dazed and Confused. So the Criterion Collection has released or re-released this film, Dazed and Confused, once again at spy number 336. And this is on the occasion of this year, 2023. And I should once again point out that this had been released on an earlier DVD back in the day, and also later a Blu-ray release back in the day. But now this year we have a 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition. And so what that means is I'll take it out of this great Digipack packaging, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And we have, for example, the 2-disc format here, and I've removed the booklet, but there's also some poster paraphernalia, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But this is one of the great releases from Criterion. It was a great release when it was initially released on DVD, and it was continued to be a great release when it was released on Blu-ray, and I dare say that tradition continues on with this new 2023 re-release. And I think the main point about this is the 4K digital restoration and the material. So let me quote from the booklet, another great aspect of this release, because it does mention information about the transfer. So I quote on page 70 of the booklet. It says, in part, Dazed and Confused is presented in its original aspect ratio of 1.85 to 1. The 2022 restoration on the 4K UHD disc was undertaken by the Criterion Collection from the 35mm original camera negative, scanned on a Lasergraphics Director film scanner. Based on the 2011 color transfer, this restoration was newly remastered in Dolby Vision HDR and approved by director Richard Linklater. The 2011 SDR restoration on the Blu-ray, supervised by Linklater and director of photography Lee Daniel, was undertaken by the Criterion Collection from a 35mm interpositive scanned on a Spirit 4K data. The original 5.1 surround soundtrack was remastered from the 35mm magnetic audio tracks. And so what we have is the Blu-ray, and again, we had the great Blu-ray release, which I thought was really good, and it looked and sounded great. But I must say that, again, I am far from being a technically minded person. And so my way of expressing and talking about how I feel about restorations and transfers, I understand is very crude and very maybe overly simplistic, and I apologize, but I'm trying to express it from a subjective viewpoint. Now, based on that experience, I must say that the 4K UHD disc and the 4K, the digital transfer, this new transfer described as being from 2022. Now, I loved the Blu-ray very much. I love the older Blu-ray, and I think if you're gonna go for the Blu-ray or you're gonna stay with the Blu-ray, you're still getting a great option in terms of the look and sound. But I must say that for me, the 4K, this new transfer was to my eyes quite exceptional. And there is a type of, for lack of a better phrase, a crispness and a color crispness to it that I found very warm and very welcoming. And the music was still pleasant to listen to my ears. And there is a type of way in which the film looks crisp, but there is, how do I express it? There's a way in which it still has a sense of softness to it, which I think preserves the sense of the timeliness of the film. You know, for me, in my eyes, you know, softness, that faint softness is evocative of a type of nostalgia of late 1970s. And then the crispness is reminding me of the time in which this film is made, early 1990s. I don't know if that makes any sense, but to my eyes and to my ears, I thoroughly was captivated and enjoyed this new 4K restoration. Very much so. I wouldn't call it a super leaps and bounds wholly different thing from what we had seen in previous releases. I wouldn't call that the case at all. But there's an evocative feeling that is noticeable, and that quality, I think, is enough for me to to feel like this 4K re-release of this film again for 2023. I think it's worth it. It's worth it for me. And so, there's this issue or this question every time re-release happens: is it worth it to get the 4K UHD re-release of it, or is it okay to stay with the Blu-ray? Now, again, I have nothing against the Blu-ray, and I wouldn't call the differences between the two versions to be wholly different from each other. So if you have the Blu-ray and you're happy with the Blu-ray, you can stay with the Blu-ray, of course. But if you are looking for, I think, a really enhanced experience that is very high quality, in my view, the 4K transfer and then this new 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format offering, I think is quite splendid indeed. So I'm very impressed. I'm very happy, and I'm glad that this is a kind of a continuation of just how iconic this release is in the Criterion catalog history, again for 2023. So well done for Criterion. In my view, this is a really splendid adoption of the 4K format using the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo physical media offering. And then continuing the tradition. So what we have in this new re-release is essentially what we already got in previous releases. So to my understanding, we are not getting anything new on the occasion of this 2023 release. So perhaps for some, that might be seen as a weakness of this new re-release by Criterion. And if you feel that way, I completely understand. But once again, I should point out that what we did get in terms of the supplements in past releases, what we got was really excellent. And so that all is being carried over into this new re-release. So what we got before is excellent, and therefore what we are getting now is excellent. It's not anything new except for, as I say, the great offering that I feel is being provided in terms of the 4K, the 2022 restoration or the 2022 transfer. Which I think is reason enough to make this purchase. But in any event, in terms of the supplements, there is nothing additional, but what we do get and what we got before was great. So what did we get before and what are we getting now? So first off, we have a commentary track. And this commentary track is described as being from the year 2006. And this is with Richard Linklater. And what's great is that I don't know if they do this with commentary tracks in recent releases, but back in sort of the earlier Blu-ray releases from Criterion and the like, they would have indexes as well for the commentary tracks, which I really appreciate. So this is a commentary track which is, I understand, still indexed. So from 2006. And here we have a great commentary track from Linklater talking about many things, talking about the spirit of 76, how that is a kind of iconic moment in American history, and how that iconic nature, the historical nature of it, is captured and not captured on purpose in the every day-to-day lives of the characters that we're meeting in Dazed and Confused, which I really love. I love the details. I love how, again, it's a film that I think is about everything and nothing all at once, which is great. And also, this is a film that is, Linklater reminds us, acknowledges here and also other places, how this is a studio film, Universal studio film. And so, in many ways, he came from the real rugged, independent filmmaking spirit prior to this film with Slacker, etc. But now he is entering into a new domain, and he does express moments where during the production he was frustrated and working in this high-budget studio climate did have its challenges, and quite a deal of challenges as well. So he doesn't express it in terms of being a wholly pleasant experience for him. However, he does acknowledge that one of the great strengths of this film is the cast. And to his understanding, he understands that the cast had a great time. It was like summer camp for people. And they met, and they made friendships and the like. And so it has that type of real party atmosphere on set, while at the same time Linklater, as the writer-director, acknowledges how for him it might have been anything but, at least for many parts of the production. But he looks back on it, and he in this time 2006, and there's no venom in his voice, there's nothing. He's a very laid back person, which I really appreciate and admire, and his way of speaking and his inflection and his recollections of things, I think, is really quite captivating and moving and very enthralling. And you definitely get that here in this commentary track, as well as other parts of the supplements, which we'll talk about. And he talks about the hazing rituals. He talks about some of the key cast members like Ben Affleck and Parker Posey and Matthew McConaughey. And he talks. There's some details that he mentions about, for instance, the importance of foosball and how some of the extras maybe didn't take it as seriously as he would have liked to. As an example, the scenes in like the Emporium, etc. And talking about how, and there are certain details too about the extras like Renee Zellweger and the notion of the high school party, the junior high school party, and the scenes that maybe didn't make the final cut, or certain plot points that kind of were there and kind of weren't there at the same time. You get a sense of this in some of the deleted scenes footage that we'll talk a little bit later in the supplements, like the Kiss statues, etc. And also expressing this film in terms of the time periods, right? Because as I mentioned, this is a film that's about the late 1970s, made in the early 1990s, and now Linklater's looking back in the 2000s. And so there are many time points that are being, I think, referenced. And my goodness, if we're thinking about time and time structure and Linklater, I mean, again, you have it in a film like Dazed and Confused, and you have it in other films as well in the Linklater canon. It's really wonderful indeed. So these and other reasons, I think, are what make this commentary track very, very special. We got it before in previous Criterion releases, but now we're getting it again. So if you have not heard the commentary track before, now's your chance. It's really, really wonderful. Again, from 2006, this is the commentary track with Richard Linklater. And as I mentioned before, this release is the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition, which means it has 2 discs. And as I mentioned, the 2 discs are right here. The 4K UHD disc has the film, and then the Blu-ray has the film plus the supplements menu. So let us now turn our attention to the supplements and what can be found with those supplements. Again, it's what we found on previous Criterion releases of this, but that's okay because what we got before was really great. So what are we getting again in terms of the supplements? So first up, we are getting a deleted scenes section, and this is totaling approximately 25 minutes. There are a ton of deleted scenes, and you can get also the option of playing them all at once, or also it has its own index as well, so you can jump to a particular deleted scene. Again, you can tell by the title of the chapter what it might be about. And I don't want to go, I have notes on the titles, but I don't want to go and read the titles because it might spoil it for those who haven't seen Dazed and Confused yet. So suffice to say, these are really quite wonderful. Again, Dazed and Confused, I understand that the original cut of it, when it was first being assembled, was a very long assembly. And so we understand that from there, things were excised, things were tightened down, things were removed completely. And so maybe to produce what ended up being the final version, the final edit of the film, but to get a sense of the life, because again, this is a sprawling epic with so many things and moments and lived-in experiences that are happening both within the frame of the film and also beyond the contours and the boundaries of the film itself, because the characters are so much larger than life in that way. And so you get a sense of this in the great assembly of deleted scenes and the various subplots that could have been, but that are still finding their echo in the final film. You get a sense of what they're, and you get further indications of the characters and how they meet, and it's wonderful. So this is the deleted scene section, approximately 25 minutes. And then next up we have the making of documentary, Making Dazed, from 2005, and this is approximately 45 minutes. This is by Kahani Korn. And here we have, again, another we had this before, but it's great to have this making of again, because we are talking about again the almost inspiration or impetus, or how many people view this film, because there are many ways of viewing this film. One such way is looking at it in the context of the coming of age drama. I think a reference point that is referred to is a film like American Graffiti, and so it was like American Graffiti for the late 1970s, and also the way in which Richard Linklater first became involved in the possibility of making this film, again coming from his independent film background and going to Los Angeles and making the pitch. He describes what it meant to make a pitch for a film to studio executives and the like, and then trying to make the deal and such. So a lot of this film is about what we see in front of the camera, also in terms of Richard Linklater's own career and trajectory, the studio system experience that is a part of the importance and significance of this in the context of Linklater's career. This is all touched upon as well. And also the work of the casting and the casting director, and the many choices in terms of the casting, and how for Richard Linklater, a lot of it had to do with trying to find people that were right for the role. And so that meant casting people that ended up being, a lot of them maybe were relatively speaking new, fresh faces. And we understand too that this film included so many people that went on to have really famous and prestigious careers in acting, as well as other fields outside of acting as well. So the casting is one of the key points which is mentioned here. And then the production details, the production stories. Again, I mentioned the idea of Richard Linklater having issues and problems and struggles in terms of his role as a director, while the cast apparently was having a really great time. It was like a party for them. And he mentions that the first assembly cut was around 2 hours and 45 minutes. So again, it reminds us just how valuable watching, say, the deleted scenes is in terms of getting a sense of it. Also, there's some great instances like Wiley Wiggins and baseball, and talking about shooting the scenes with baseball, and how it's a lot about performance, which is really great. And the idea of living, keep on living, LIVIN, and then the rap and the longevity and the cultural impact of the film Dazed and Confused. It's all touched upon in this wonderful documentary. So it's approximately 45 minutes. If you haven't seen it yet, now's your chance. Making Dazed, Kahani Korn. And then going on with the supplements, we have the auditions assembly, because again, this is a cast of characters that is really epic, and a lot of it had to do with the casting. One of the great successful points of this film is the casting, and so we have a totaling 23 minutes approximately, an assembly of the auditions, audition tapes of many of the actors that appear in this film. So again, that's one of the great joys, to see the earnestness and the true to life nature of these people as they are performing, and you see that reflected so well in their eventual performances in the final versions of the film. So the auditions are included as well. They were included before, and now they are included again. They are made intact, which is really wonderful. So that is approximately 23 minutes. And then we have an epic almost, it's its own it's its own entity in a way, which is Beer Bus at the Moon Tower, and this is approximately 2 hours, or an hour and 59 minutes totaling, and it has various components to it, which is like in-character discussions, and then also cast and crew interviews, and also discussions about anecdotes and productions, etc. But what is so fascinating is it's totaling 2 hours, and if you haven't seen this already, I strongly encourage you to check it out, because it's kind of like an extended feel of the film itself and the atmosphere, Dazed and Confused, as well as the making of that we got a sense of in the commentary and the other making of documentary, and it's all combined in this living entity of a work that is made, I think, even more fascinating by its presentation here. It was like this before, and it's continuing on like this now, which is you can have the choice of playing each of the chapters, and there are many chapters. You can play them selecting a specific chapter that you want to go to, or you can press the random button, and you can have that choice be the assembly of the entire thing, but played randomly. In a kind of random order, which is really fascinating. It has this patchwork quality, and so if you play it randomly, you're not going to watch the same order of the chapters. It's always going to be a unique order every time you watch it. So I really admire that, because it's suggestive of, again, the community feel of the film Dazed and Confused, both in front and behind the camera, as well as giving a sense of the sprawling epic nature. I mean, there's so many characters and so many feelings and approaches and so many actors and so many anecdotes that are all assembled in this way, and you can just pick one and then pick another and then just join them together in any way, and it still is the same feeling, but it's still its own unique individualized way. I love that. Again, it's so much, this assembly itself is like Dazed and Confused in terms of the philosophy. It's about so many things, and it's about a singular thing. It's about differences and similarities, everything and nothing all at once. And so that assembly and that arrangement, I think, is wonderful. So please check this out if you can. It's totaling approximately 2 hours. It's epic. It's fantastic. And then the supplements are rounded out by a trailer for the film. Again, I should point out once again that we are not getting anything new, but what we are getting, or what we are getting again here, is brilliant. It's splendid. It's fantastic. Could the Criterion Collection have included something new? Yeah, it would have been very interesting to have done so. But I don't see that as an overly detrimental point of criticism for purposes of this 2023 re-release. Because, as I say, from my vantage point, what we got before was great, and so what we are getting now is equally great. So that is the sense of what you can get again in terms of the supplements on the Blu-ray part of the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo of this re-release in 2023. And so now let us talk about the packaging and other paraphernalia that's associated with this release. And it comes in this Digipack format, this packaging, which is essentially what we got in previous releases. But as I say, these previous releases were epic in terms of their presentation and packaging, and so that format is continued on here. So you get that wonderful sense of continuity. It's one of the great packaging and presentation releases from Criterion in terms of how the Digipack format is used, and the way in which you have these circles as well, and the outer component and the inner compartment as well. So very, very iconic. So I'm glad that it was carried over in this way. And then the design is carried through in terms of what we have inside here, what we got before, which is great. In terms of some of the other paraphernalia, I should point out that we do get, once again, the poster, which is part of previous releases, but you get that here again here. So wonderful stuff. It's great to have this poster again. It's a reminder of what a great release this has always been in Criterion's catalog, and to have that continuity continued on is wonderful. And I must mention too the booklet. The booklet is one of the best. It is one of the best that Criterion has ever released, and it was like that before, and it's like that now. And the reason why is, again, the design work is epic, and the book is filled to the brim with information and details and little Easter eggs. For example, it has, of course, the cast and credits list, but also it has the soundtrack listing right here. And I wish all booklets could have this, because sometimes the film soundtrack and the song selection is really important. So to have this type of sort of reference point, I think, is it's clever, and it's also a reminder of just how important the music choices are in the context of creating the world of Dazed and Confused. And I should point out too that we have Kent Jones's Dream On, and we have the 70s Obviously Sucked, Not, or at least not the music anyway, by Jim Durgadis, and Chuck Klosterman's Not So Long Ago But Very Far Away, The Spirit of 76 by John Spong, and Profiles in Confusion. And Profiles in Confusion is like a kind of yearbook profile list of characters and their names in the film, and little descriptions about them. So the writings and the paraphernalia that we saw in this booklet are like what we've seen before. But again, what we got before was epic. This is one of the best booklets that Criterion has ever released, and we're getting that again here now. To my understanding, to my eye, it is more or less what we got in terms of previous booklets from Criterion, especially the Blu-ray release. The Blu-ray release has the booklet, which is like so. So it is pretty much identical, except I think for notes about the transfer, because we're talking about a new transfer on the occasion of this 2023 release. So apart from that, it looks to my eyes to be identical. So the writings are epic, and they talk about many facets of the film. Again, my strong suggestion is to not to watch the film first many times if possible, and then you can explore the great writings here, and then have fun with many of the sort of games and the little playful attitude that the booklet has here. I'm over the moon. This was, again, it's nice to get this continuity in terms of what we're getting here. I should point out that it's art director Sarah Habibi, designer Mark English, design Austin. Well done. It's an iconic release that is, again, being re-released on the occasion of 2023. And all the paraphernalia and all the reminders and all the goodies that are associated with this physical media release. Again, a reminder, too, of just how great Criterion was and is in terms of physical media releases. This time updating it for 2023 and the 4K transfer and the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray format. So that is, in a nutshell, I think, Dazed and Confused, at least my take on Dazed and Confused, this 2023 release. So while we're not getting anything new per se in terms of the special features or the way it has looked in now versus how it looks in previous release. I'm talking about the packaging anyway. What we are getting, I think, is a 4K transfer, which to my eyes and ears, I think is definitely worth the upgrade. And so, but if you are very satisfied with your Blu-ray release, then go for it. You can stick with your Blu-ray release because it's a great film in the Blu-ray. It's also a great film in the 4K UHD disc. So whatever your choice is, my dear friends, I think you're going to be just enjoying this film for enjoying it for many times and many rewatches indeed. So this is the film which is Dazed and Confused. All right, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Dazed and Confused. So until the next video, my dear friends, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.